当一个拥有美国公民身份的中华民国国民，比如说赖佩霞女士，当她要放弃的时候，我看到我们 AIT 的官网上面是写这个时间不能加速，所以一定要3到6个月吗？有可能会更快吗
？And the process takes time. I can't really predict in a specific case how much time that would take. But it's a well-known process. It's up on the AIT website.
美国对于台湾的下一个总统参选人，谁会产生总统，谁会当选总统这件事情，真的是完全中立，不会去介入吗？
They're very different people, right? But in terms of the ability to do the job of being an elected official, they've all clearly demonstrated that, which is why I think the United States could work with any one of them.
台湾这2年都在讲说，叫你的儿子去打仗，很多人都会写留言在 Facebook 跟我讲说，啊，你都支持在台湾防卫自己，要对抗中国大陆，那你就赶快叫你小孩去当兵啊！对啊，来，观众朋友，孙晓雅处长他的女儿就在当兵啊。
Oh, my husband and I were really proud of her. So the idea of public service, whether in a civilian capacity like a teacher or a diplomat, or in the military is very strong in my family. And I think it's important because it's a way to give back to your community. The United States has been very, very good to my family, and we are a part of preserving the freedoms and the lifestyle that Americans enjoy.
本集节目由下班生医赞助播出。
下班的聊一聊，下班和你聊，各位网友大家晚安。今天本节目非常荣幸的邀请到了梦幻的来宾，也就是美国在台协会 AIT 的处长孙晓雅处长。处长你好。OK， welcome to our studio。那个谢谢处长哦，因为我跟观众朋友报告一下，我们今天这个节目呢 ，AIT 有翻译人在现场，那 AIT 的帅哥翻译人 Edward 也在哈，所以节目进行中呢，我会讲中文。那处长呢，其实是会讲中文，而且讲得非常好。可是处长是个外交官，所以处长就全程用英文回答，好不好？那一开始我们先请处长跟下班和你聊的观众朋友自我介绍，打个招呼，谢谢。
Great. So thank you very much for this opportunity to be here. I am delighted to be on your show. I've been the AIT director now for about 2 years, a little bit more than 2 years. I'm trying to travel all around the island, meet people, see things, better understand the situation. And it's a great privilege to be on your show and be able to express myself a bit to your listeners.
好，这个其实刚刚处长也特别讲了，我这边请翻译帮我翻译一个问题哦。我非常想知道处长，因为我刚刚有跟处长说，我以前跑新闻的时候呢，也跑外交新闻，有时候会遇到 AIT 的处长，可是呢，他基本上看到我们台湾的记者，尤其我们跑政治的，都是 no comment no comment， 就不会有什么任何的表述，只有发言人会跟我们讲话了哈。但是这个处长呢，这次却是愿意来上节目，而且有想要跟台湾的民众多谈谈、多对话。那处长为什么会有这样的改变？是你个人就是希望跟台湾民众多对话，还是说 AIT 对台湾的政策从原本的比较保守，已经变得比较开放了？
So I think a lot of it is personal preference. Everybody has their own personal style. I am pretty outgoing. I like to talk to people. But I will say also there's been a huge evolution in journalism over the past few years. And particularly with the pandemic and lockdown, people got a lot more used to having sort of a digital interface. Yeah. Social media, online media, YouTube platforms, live streaming. 10 years ago, it didn't really exist. So I wouldn't compare myself too much to previous directors who didn't have the opportunity to come on a show like yours.
好，那这个处长来上节目的这些内容，是不是AIT 的这个美国的总部或甚至是国务院都是欢迎他来台湾多上节目的？那谈的内容是不是要经过一些讨论，还是就是处长自己的权限就可以完全对外来发言呢？
So I have the right to talk about pretty much anything I want to talk about, but I'm only going to talk about my job. If you wanted to talk to me about U.S. policy towards Egypt or Russia, I would say I can't answer that because those aren't issues that I work on.
好 ，OK， 那当然呢，这个处长讲得非常明白了。但是对于美国在台的政策呢，对台的政策，我想处长一定可以代表的。好，那孙晓雅处长其实对台湾并不陌生，好，台湾的民众现在对他也不陌生，因为他 跑遍全台各地。等一下我会秀一些照片给大家看。我们现在看一下孙晓雅处长30年前来台湾的时候，您的第一张名片，对不对？那我刚才特别问了处长哈，那因为现在节目在进行，还要再重问一次，为什么处长你到台湾 AIT 的第一份的这个工作上面没有 title 啊？你就写个 Sandra， 为什么没有你的可能你是做什么的发言人啊或干嘛？怎么会没有呢？
You'll notice it also doesn't have an email address or a telephone number.
对啊。
That's because I was a visa officer, and we were very popular.
所有人要去美国都要透过处长。
Right, that was my job. I sat there and I said, 你为什么要去美国？ And then
对，所以你的个人资料不要放在上面，对不对
That's right.
哦，所以这是这个之前非常宝贵的一张名片哈，这是您的第一张名片。好，再来我要给大家看照片了，来各位网友，这个是 AIT 的珍贵照片，30年前在这应该叫移民官，对不对？好看 Visa 算移民官，签证官。好 ，OK。那个处长哈，以前不是处长的时候呢，是这个样子。来，请那个导播给大家个特写，年轻漂亮的孙晓，现在也是很漂亮了哈。
But I'm not that young. No.
那时候专门在看这个签证的哈。OK， 好。那所以你手上拿的这份应该是已经过关了哈 ，Priority。
Yes, it's already finished.
他是一个重要人士，是不是 ？OK， 好，大家看一下，这是年轻的时候孙晓雅处长来到台湾的工作哈，是一个签证官。然后呢，这是在信义路，对不对
Yes.
师大附中对面那个旧址，现在办公室已经到内湖去了。
对。
那你会很怀念那个旧的办公室吗
I do. In fact, I've gone in there and walked around and looked at it. They've torn my old visa building down. And now it's a parking lot. Or at least it was the last time I walked in there.
我跟处长报告，你帮我翻一下哈。那个以后会变成一个音乐图书馆，因为我前2天有问那个台北 City Mayor 蒋万安，他说那个地方会变成是一个这个图书馆，而且呢会有一个演艺厅，到时候再欢迎处长再回来。
That would be great.
Yeah， 那大家可以看到这个珍贵的照片当中呢，孙晓雅处长其实去了很多台湾的地方哈。那有一些我还不太确定在哪里，所以我要问一下哈，处长这个是什么地方？阿里山的云海吗
I think it's 阿里山。
阿里山，那你怎么去的
I went in a car.
那谁带你去的
That one, I think I might have gone.
是不是
So this
is this handsome guy?
was my fiance. He's my husband now.
哦，你的未婚夫。
And the lady was a coworker of mine.
哦，你们的同事就对了。在当时，您的先生，那您的先生那时候也在台湾的 AIT 哦
No. So he was in graduate school at the time. He was at Columbia University doing a master's program.
所以他就是来看你就对了。
That's right.
OK， 好，你看这是年轻的时候，这个孙晓雅处长他的先生，他的未婚夫啦，就来台湾看他。然后呢，我刚刚有问了，但得到答案了，骑机车到淡水，所以。处长，你会骑 scooter 或者是
？No, I sat on the scooter. He drove the scooter.
哦，然后那个时候骑到淡水，那你有没有什么印象？屁股很痛。
Yeah.
骑很久，对不对
Yeah, we had to go for a really long way, but also Damshui, and we went to the old British consulate. It's very pretty. It's a very nice port town. It still is.
好，这是30年前。30年前淡水那时候有可能1992、93的时候嘛，对不对？您是1992到1994在台湾第一次2年。
That's right.
那有可能那时候我也在淡水，那时候可能在淡江念书的时候。好，那这个东门饺子馆现在好像还在，在永康街附近嘛，哈。我刚刚也问了说，那这旁边的2位是谁？哦，我太惊讶了，居然是处长的爸爸妈妈。来台湾看你
That's right.
哦，他们要看看你在这边过得好不好就对了。好，那处长这一段哈，就是讲1992到1994你在台湾这2年，当时台湾留给你什么样的印象
It gave me a great feeling. So I'm from a part of Florida that has weather actually very much like Kaohsiung. It's hot, it's humid, the winter is lovely. So when I came here, a lot of people said, "Is it too hot? Is it too humid?" And I thought, no, this is just like home. And then it became winter and it rained every day because Taipei's winter is not so nice. But people were really friendly. The food was good. It was easy to get around. I loved my first assignment and I was delighted to come back.
那你30年后，现在你2021年再回来嘛？你觉得跟你30年前的时候有什么不一样吗？
So, I mean, you can see in Taiwan what happens to a place with 30 years of positive economic growth and like strong democratic development. Taiwan now has much more of a sort of environmental consciousness than people did in the early 90s. the litter problem has been comprehensively solved, and the taking out of garbage with the musical garbage trucks is actually sort of amazing to foreigners, I think. Taiwan has a world-renowned public health system, a really strong electoral system. I would say all of the changes that I can see as an outsider have been positive.
处长，我想问哈，因为你刚刚一讲，突然想到1992年你来的时候，台湾或者说中华民国当时还没有民选总统，这个你帮我问一下哦。那个时候的人民给你的感觉跟现在，有没有什么不一样？就是已经经过了20几年，我们直接选举我们的这个总统的台湾民众，在30年前，民风就是人民给你的感受有不一样吗？
So I think the people are the same. The people are friendly, they're smart, they're creative, they're open to outsiders and to talking to people who are new or different. Taiwan hadn't had a direct presidential election at that point, but the local elections were happening, and there were campaigns all over the place. You couldn't walk down the street in Tianmu without someone giving you tissues with the Li Zhang's face on it. There was a lot of election going on.
好 ，OK。那处长，因为我看你真的很喜欢台湾，好，所以你看我这边准备了很多，这是现在的照片，这2年的照片。你带这个罗森伯格去饶河街夜市，是不是？我会问比较轻松的话题，等等。我问处长，你很喜欢去饶河街，因为我看到还有一张照片，我先秀一下哈。您跟你的先生带你的小孩也是去饶河街，对不对 ？Right， 饶河街，对不对 ？OK， 好。那是怎样？你是饶河街的这个夜市观光大使吗？你特别喜欢去饶河街 ？Why?
That's because I have a bad sense of direction. I do love the Sherlin Night Market, but every time I go there, I get lost, and I can't find the place I'm trying to find.
没有方向感哦。
No, none.
那你自己会开车或者是骑车吗
I can drive a car, but I get lost.
OK， 哦，喜欢饶河街夜市不是因为东西好吃哦。
The food is very good, but it's also just one street up and back.
是因为饶河街只有一个出入口，所以 OK， 饶河街的那个摊商的理事长，你还是要赶快请这个处长常常去吃。但至少你看他连理事主席来都带他去吃。那你最喜欢吃饶河街的什么
I like the black pepper buns.
哦，胡椒饼。你喜欢吃辣的吗
Yes.
？Spicy 的。哦，你喜欢吃辣的。好。
Those are not very spicy.
它胡椒饼不会很辣，但是它的那个胡椒那个 pepper 它有一个特别的味道。好 ，OK， 那这是到哪里？花莲吗？
花莲。
那你会跳吗？我之前只有看照片，影片有没有
？There is probably a video. So this
跳得好不好
So I went there. So I did an event with Minister Yi Zhang from the Council of Indigenous Peoples.
Oh.
And at the end of the event, he said, "We would love you to come to Hualien to the Fengnianji." And I said yes. And I think he was like, "Oh my goodness." She said yes. I thought I was just asking her to be polite.
所以大家可以看得出来，因为孙晓雅处长，我真的必须这样说了哈，我不能代表台湾人，但我是台湾人嘛，我非常欢迎处长。欢迎你来台湾，也欢迎你来我们的节目。为什么？因为你真的用行动哈。以前的处长，我不是要批评以前处长，就以前处长没有那么多公开的活动，或许他们有去，但我们不知道。那你在台湾各地让大家都看到，刚刚花莲饶河街夜市，这是台东的热气球季。那我刚刚跟处长讲，我知道，因为那一天其实饶庆年县长也有邀请我，他跟我讲说剩下要来哎，我因为工作我们要录下班和你聊没有去哈，所以你去，这是您先生嘛，对不对
？Yes。
那你对台湾这也是在台东这个哈，就是到处去吃饭。好，来我问处长，您对台湾的印象，就是说你跑了这么多地方，你有特别喜欢哪里吗
？Oh boy, that's a hard question. So I would say, city-wise, other than Taipei, where of course I live. The city that I visited the most is Tainan. It's very easy to get around. Like I said before, I don't drive. So I like places that are close together that you can walk to. I think though, the most beautiful driving scenery is the coast road down the coast of Taidong, right on the Pacific Ocean. I grew up near the coast, the Gulf of Mexico.
你自己开吗
My husband drove.
但你每次都要等他来你才能玩哦，就要等他，所以就是这一次对不对？你在台东的海岸看成那个 Pacific Ocean 的时候，你觉得特别漂亮
？Oh, really, just enormously beautiful.
那你有去三仙台吗？
Yes，
就是有那个拱桥8个人，所以你喜欢台东，对不对
？But I've only been there once, but I have a very good first impression.
哦，好，这个身为外交官也不能随便就讲说喜欢哪里，其他地方就被得罪了哈。好，那大家看到这里哈，在这几张把它看完了，这是新竹，对不对？我刚刚问了，去喝碰烘茶。其实观众朋友看到这里，你想想，你看看，你去的地方有比孙晓雅处长还多吗？很多台湾人去的地方可能已经没有你多了哈，所以你可能比大家都还要了解台湾。然后呢，台湾的又是饶河街夜市，所以饶河街夜市可以赶快颁给你一个那个。就是荣誉大使。
So, but I can say there are many people in Taiwan who have been to places. I know this from having done visas 30 years ago. Many people in Taiwan who have been to places in America, like the Grand Canyon and Las Vegas, that I have never been to. I think when you're a visitor, you try, you make a list. All these places I want to go. And when you live someplace, you don't necessarily feel that urgency to travel.
OK， 处长讲的也很公道啦，因为美国人很多也可能比国外的游客他自己也没去很多地方。那但我想问处长哦，你台湾22县市都去过吗
？Not yet.
还有哪里没去过
？Oh, I have not been yet to Nantou.
南投。
Although I'm going later this week. I haven't been on.
你要去了是不是？已经要去了。OK， 我想说可能打电话给南投县长许就好。
So I'm still working. So there are places like Nantou. I've been to Sun Moon Lake as a tourist, but I haven't had an official visit. I'm doing that this week.
日月潭没去过。
I have no. I've been there.
那就是南投啦。
But not this tour. So I went 30 years ago.
不是以正式处长的身份去。
所以你的意思说你去过日月潭，这样算就是那所以你都去过啦。照理讲的话，就是说你真的有去过那个地方。
So a lot of places I've driven through on the highway, but that's not really the same as going someplace. Okay. So I will say, in the case of the United States, I have been to the Chicago airport. I don't know, 15 times. I have never left the airport. So if I'm on the highway driving north and I drive through Miaoli County, have I been to Miaoli? Well, I mean, okay. You tell me.
好，所以就是只是开车过去这样不算啊。所以孙晓雅处长他是很坚持，就是处长身份有去访问，像刚刚讲那个台东你就算有，因为你是以处长身份去参加那个热气球季嘛。好，那去了这么多地方，像这个我本来也以为这不在台湾，就是说这是宜兰的。抹茶山，是要这个 hiking 的。
And you see, it's the top of the mountain. We look exhausted.
很累啊。
It was yes, it was hot.
好，我下去去试看看。这张不是哦，各位网友，这张是那个跟这个处长的先生在土耳其，因为处长先生是土耳其的副大使，
That's right.
对不对？好，所以他来台湾看你，去这个土耳其看他了哈。那我们一开始给大家看了这么多轻松的照片之后呢，我第一题要先问。这个处长就是说，你在台湾也这么积极主动的，也到处去看了以后，你觉得身为 AIT 的处长，你在台湾最主要的工作是什么？
I think it is maintaining and building relationships. So we have relationships across a broad variety of subjects. We have trade, commercial, investment relationships, people-to-people relationships, visas, students. We have a security relationship that's very important. We have relationships with universities, relationships with chambers of commerce and the electric and electronics manufacturing associations. My job really is to build the relationship between the people of the United States and the people of Taiwan so that we understand each other and we can work together on things that are mutually beneficial.
好，那处长，因为你在台湾哈，我看你这么用心的到处去哈。我相信你也会了解到台湾其实是一个怎么讲，就是意见多元的社会，有的人喜欢，有人不喜欢。这一年来吧，我觉得这段期间有出现所谓的以美论。虽然说美国现在拜登总统他对台湾包含了军售啦，包含很多法案啊，台湾旅行法等等，都是非常多友好台湾的行动，不只是讲，而且有做。可是台湾依旧有所谓的以美论，就是美国不可信。你看美国，他可能会在关键时刻就会这个放弃你，他就会离开，他就不会帮助你。那像这样子有这样子想法的台湾民众，你要怎么跟他们对话呢？
So first off, I think it's important to acknowledge that in a democratic society, skepticism is a good thing. So one of the big sort of slogans when I was a very young child and growing up, and that I think is still true today, is question authority. People need to ask, why do you have this policy? What is in it for me? Why do you say, I think skepticism is actually the sign of a strong democracy. The ability to question governments, officials, authorities means that you have freedom of speech, you have freedom of thought. So I really encourage people, if they're curious about what AIT's policies are, what the US policies are, to ask and to say, why do you do it this way instead of this other way? Why aren't you doing something different? Because you only get full understanding if you ask questions.
因为台湾除了这个就是媒体报道、新闻媒体报道之外，还有很多的政论节目。好，每天晚上我不知道处长看不看。那有时候常常都谈到美国的话题，美国对台湾的军售啦，美国可能卖了台湾不要的武器，是硬塞给台湾的，也有这样的讲法。那发言人可以面对台湾的跑 AIT 路线的记者回答他们问题，可是政论节目这些人他们不是记者啊，他们是所谓的评论员或名嘴。那这些人他们不会跟 AIT 的发言体系有连结。你会用什么方式去就是跟这些政论节目讨论的话题？如果他讨论的内容是错的时候，你要怎么样去更正这些讯息，然后让台湾民众知道
？So if we see something that is deliberately wrong,
yeah,
we will ask for a correction. So if someone goes up and they pronounce this news a fact that is incorrect, we will work to correct the record. If someone says, we don't think that's the best choice, we think something else might be better, that's their opinion, right? And so we don't try to correct people's opinions, although we do engage with thought leaders. It might not be me directly, it could be someone from our political section, our economic section, our press and public affairs section. But when I travel around to Taiwan, I visit universities, I talk to professors and graduate students. I do question and answer sessions with locally resident Americans, with members of the Taiwan business community. So we do try to engage and provide that option for asking questions. But like I said, we're not trying to correct the record if someone says, I personally think that's wrong.
OK， 这其实处长讲也蛮好的就是说对于评论的部分 opinion 的部分，那没关系，那是他的想法。但是如果他所引述的内容或是他讲的内容是不对的时候呢，AIT 的这可能就会发出新闻稿来跟大家做说明的。我觉得这样也是蛮不错的那我再进一步请教处长，就是台湾有很多民众其实我自己个人因为我是个政治评论员嘛，我觉得台湾喜欢美国的民众应该超过80%，就大家就喜欢美国，也依赖美国了那依赖到我就觉得说，因为台湾现在目前中国大陆的这个军事的紧张。美国要多帮台湾所以跟美国买军购，其实台湾大部分民众都是 OK 的我 including myself OK。那可是我想说，那可不可以更进一步啊？就因为中华民国以前跟美国本来就是有邦交的，是后来没有了嘛。我想处长你很清楚，这个比较严肃的题目了也请你翻译等一下帮我翻清楚。那现在因为美台友好，可是就有讲说，那是不是可以进到一步，就是有可能建交吗？或者说？比现在更深一层、更正式的邦交关系就是外交关系，不是邦交关系，邦交就已经建交了。有没有办法更直接的跟台湾有深层的外交关系？不是只有现在这样子 ，AIT 是美国在台协会，它并不是一个正式的使馆。这个部分的话，至少在您的层级的话，你要怎么跟台湾民众说明？希望美国跟台湾建交的台湾民众，你要怎么给他们这个回应
？So I get this question a lot. I think a lot of people wonder about it. The United States has a long-standing one China policy. It's rooted both in domestic legislation in the United States, the Taiwan Relations Act, as well as the 3 joint communiques and the 6 assurances. And that policy is a policy that its foundation is what we call the status quo, which is the current situation, which is an ambiguous situation for Taiwan, but it's a situation that has enabled decades of positive economic growth, improvement in sort of people's standard of living, an ability for Taiwan to become just a world-beating tech powerhouse. So there's a lot of good in the status quo, even though in some ways it can feel a bit uncomfortable, and I know that people sometimes would like more clarity. The status quo the United States believes is a way to maintain peace, stability, and prosperity, not just in Taiwan, but throughout the region. And because Taiwan is such an important economic player, stability and economic growth and here means stability and economic growth throughout the world.
好，那因为这个前几天啊，联合国的这个大会啊，美国的总统阁下拜登总统，他也特别提到了，就是希望再增加，是不是可以再多几个常任理事国，不止中美英法俄。那2年前，2021就是您刚到台湾的时候，正好美国的亚太助理国务卿提到了联合国的275号决议文，因为前年刚好是50年，今年52年的那个275号决议文好像被误用了，它不代表台湾不能参与国际组织。好，2年前美国的官方提出这样的想法，那2年过去了，请问处长，就是实质帮助台湾参与国际组织有意义的参与，这是怎么做？那包含了 WHA 已经好几年都不能去了，好，我就直接问了哈，就请处长看可不能回答我，就是说台湾有些民众觉得说，因为美国都支持这个议题，但永远都是台湾的友邦在提案。如果美国提案的话，会不会有更多的 follower， 他们会跟随美国？那个票数可能就会更多。这个部分，美国有可能帮台湾提案，就是以观察员身份加入 WHA， 以达到有意义参与国际组织的目的嘛？
So I'm going to start with the caveat that I am not an expert on how the World Health Organization or any of the other international organizations in Geneva work. But I will say, I think Taiwan's diplomatic partners have a strong voice and they play an important role of being sort of the official advocates within systems like the WHO and the UN for Taiwan. And it's important and we should not discount that. At the same time, the United States and other unofficial partners also have an important role to play. And when you have a multiplicity of voices, some coming through official channels, some coming through unofficial channels, that can be really effective. The United States firmly believes that Taiwan ought to be able to have a voice in institutions like the World Health Assembly. Taiwan has been able to attend in the past. They're being blocked from attending now. That's wrong. And in particular, during the pandemic, it was extremely wrong because Taiwan has an enormous amount of sort of epidemic prevention expertise that the world couldn't benefit from because Taiwan was closed out of that fora.
好，这个处长真是有问必答哦。今天非常谢谢处长来哦。我继续再提几个问题哦，因为我们看到除了这个法案之外哦，美国对台湾的军售呢，其实也非常多，尤其拜登总统任内呢，已经有11次了。那也因为这样的关系呢，大家也意识到就是台海的紧张关系，包含台湾的兵役，现在也要从现在已经9月了哈，到明年的2024年1月开始，我们台湾的年轻人，包含including my son 啊，就要变，他就是第1年，我大儿子就是第1年，又变1年哈。那处长你怎么看待就是台湾的防卫能力这一块？因为平常也比较少听到您讲这个，但毕竟您是 AIT 的处长哈，美国会希望台湾自己有防卫自己的决心跟准备吗？您的对于军事这一块的态度是怎么样？
So absolutely, the United States is committed to help Taiwan, to support Taiwan in its effort to defend itself against a rising threat in the region. And arms sales and other support is predicated on being sort of proportionate or responsive to the threat that Taiwan faces. We do think, though, that the first responsibility for defense is self-defense. Taiwan needs to show that it can defend itself. And I think Taiwan is really working toward that aim. Taiwan has a professional, well-resourced, well-supported military that does a very good job operating complex systems, the same systems in many cases that are in the U.S. arsenal.
自我防卫的这个武器要有，决心要有，训练要有。我特别找出这几张照片啊，就是处长去过，你应该是唯一一个有去过外岛哈，金门、澎湖跟马祖。以前的处长可能当然也忙了，我非常小心这个话题，不是说只有孙晓雅处长棒棒，其他处长都不棒哈，那我就惨了。就是，但是至少我们看到孙晓雅处长你去了金门、马祖、澎湖，尤其金门跟马祖就是我们所谓的前线嘛。来，我问处长，您是 你是刻意的要到那里去，代表说虽然这个地方被大家讲很危险，但是我敢去，是这样吗？
So I am trying to get to all of Taiwan's jurisdictions, the metropolitan cities and the counties. And so I've been to Penghu twice. I've also visited Mazu, and I'm just back from Jinmen. But you see from the pictures what I was doing there. I was engaging with some English language teaching programs with children. I visited the Gaoliang factory in Mazu. I was in the cave where the vocal performances, the music performances happen. So whenever I travel in Taiwan, whether it is to these 3 locations or to Hualien or to Taidong or to anywhere else, I try to sort of amplify all of the various ways that the United States and AIT engage with Taiwan. Whether it's arts and culture, economics, we would love to sell sorghum to the Gaoliang factories, or education and cultural affairs and work with English language learning.
其实讲到这个自我防卫我现在接下来给大家看这张照片我就觉得特别有感，因为其实我在今天之前我并不知道孙晓雅处长他的女儿是美国的军人。而且呢，刚刚我在跟他谈到这个话题的时候呢，他非常以他的女儿为荣。那我其实还蛮有感慨的因为台湾这2年都在讲说，叫你的儿子去打仗，很多人都会写留言在 Facebook 跟我讲说，啊，你都支持在台湾防卫自己，要对抗中国大陆，那你就赶快叫你小孩去当兵啊。对啊，来，观众朋友，孙晓雅处长他的女儿就在当兵啊，为保卫自己的国家当兵不是什么羞耻的事情。我想请问处长，就是怎么看您的女儿？这是您的公子跟您的女儿她是在军校，对不对？当个军官嘛怎么看待您的女儿去从军？然后女儿还不是儿子那你女儿跟你讲说她要去当这个军人，保卫自己的国家，保卫美国的时候呢，你又是怎么跟她讲的？
Oh, my husband and I were really proud of her. She went out on her own. She acquired, university is very expensive in the United States. And if you open the photo up a little bit more, she graduated from Fordham University, which is a very expensive private school in New York. Close it down so you can see the banner behind her. So right, she graduated from Fordham. It's a private school. It's not a military academy. But the U.S. Army paid for all of her tuition. We were really proud of her. She took the initiative to get the scholarship to go to the school that she wanted to go to. We have a strong tradition of service in my family in particular. My father's family has a lot of people who were soldiers or in the Navy. My mother's family, they are all teachers. So the idea of public service, whether in a civilian capacity like a teacher or a diplomat, or in the military, is very strong in my family. And I think it's important because it's a way to give back to your community. The United States has been very, very good to my family. And we are a part of preserving the freedoms and the lifestyle that Americans enjoy.
是听处长讲这个我还蛮有感的我是顺带跟各位网友也提一下，因为在很多的国家，特别是美国，军人的国家地位是受到尊敬的。那也因为他受到尊敬，所以他保卫国家的时候没有任何迟疑。我觉得我们台湾这一点要赶快做一点整理的，就我们到底要怎么样？好，就是也要给军人。你看像美国大联盟每一次开球的时候都是谁？就是一个阿兵哥啊，他从前线回来，你不用管他是什么上将，没有，他就是他可能就是一个上兵，或是一个少尉，或者是一个士官长都可以。
But it's important that society recognize that soldiers come from within. In the United States, during the Vietnam War period, soldiers were not universally loved and respected in the United States. It was a very difficult period for people in the service. I had an uncle who was in the Navy then. And he doesn't have good memories of people supporting soldiers. So it really does change. And I think it's something that when society embraces the armed forces, you can have society and the military working together in mutually complementary ways to protect institutions, to protect your way of life. And, Taiwan has a wonderful way of life and really strong institutions. And with the universal service, which we do not have in the United States, everyone in Taiwan is invested in the military in a way that's not the case with us in the U.S.
好，那这个处长来到台湾，重回台湾2年了因为也看到台湾其实在这个政治议题上面呢，就是非常的激烈冲撞。那统独议题也常常都是这是台湾民意基金会做的民调 他就是在讲说，你支持这个两岸是统一，或者是台湾独立或维持现状的一个民调。当然，这次的民调有很大争议，因为有人觉得说你的问卷方式等等，但不管哈，我们就简单这个，我也不细谈这个民调了。就是说，台湾大概将近一半人认为说，我们就是一个国家，跟中国大陆已经就是不想要以后变成一个国家。那我没有特别要问你，因为这很敏感。我只是想问说，处长，你对于你来台湾了嘛？你回来台湾2年了以后，你觉得台湾像这样子的民意，你的观察跟你的看法是什么？
So you're right, this particular survey is a little bit controversial, but we follow surveying in Taiwan very closely. There are a lot of different surveys. The numbers come out differently, but the trend lines tend to be about the same. I mean, I think fundamentally, like I said earlier, the US One China policy rests on that foundation of holding on to a status quo that has delivered peace and security for decades. And that means that no one changes the status quo, and certainly not by force.
我加问一题哈，就是 AIT 自己在台湾会有自己的调查台湾民意的方式跟这个做法吗？有吗？有在做台湾的相关民调吗？
No, we rely on the wide array of publicly available surveying here. There's no need for, there are places in the world where the United States might survey opinion, but not in places where there are already reliable existing surveys.
好，但是 AIT 会常常跟台湾的一些可能政界或是相关各界的意見領袖，就是會晤之後得到一些你們對台灣的觀察，是不是？
Oh, absolutely. I mean, honestly, like people come up to me in the grocery store and parking lots and they tell me their opinions about what AIT is doing. So we are collecting those opinions informally like that all the time. But when we look at opinion polling, we look at the existing polls that are already being done by, you know, media institutions, universities, and others here in Taiwan.
处长，我想要请教，因为我不知道我们这集播出，因为各位观众朋友，我们访谈的过程之后，我们会做一点这个字幕，所以呢，不是今天你看到的播出，今天并不是我们录影时间，是往前一点。我不知道这问题解决了没有哈，但是我这边就问一个通案性的，不是特案性的，就是当一个拥有美国公民身份的中华民国国民，比如说赖佩霞女士，当她要放弃的时候，我看到我们 AIT 的官网上面是写这个时间不能加速，所以一定要3到6个月吗？有可能会更快吗？因为以往像2011年的时候，有一位林瑞雄先生，他放弃美国籍，使用了54天，所以3到6个月是一个举例，还是说确实就需要这么久的时间？那如果是的话，为什么以前只需要50几天，现在可能要到90天？
Okay, that's a good question. I know it's very timely. So renunciation of citizenship is a serious step, right? It's not something that the United States takes lightly. You know, citizenship carries rights and responsibilities, and one of my most important duties when I'm overseas is protecting American citizens abroad. So we care deeply about it. We take it seriously. It is a process that involves some bureaucracy. It's also a process that happens all around the world for a variety of different reasons. People will renounce their citizenship because they want to hold elected office, for tax reasons, for family inheritance reasons. There are places in the world where you can't own beachside property if you hold a foreign passport. So there are a lot of reasons why people do this. And the process takes time. I can't really predict in a specific case how much time that would take, but it's a well-known process. It's up on the AIT website, the State Department website. If someone wants to do it, they're certainly welcome to, and we'll walk them through the process.
好，我补问哈，因为那请处长可不可以请教处长，就是那在最近半年好了哈，就是有到 AIT 去申請要放棄美國籍的，他大概的時間大概花多少？我們不要講他是誰嘛哈。就真的就是这个时间吗？3个月以上吗？
I have no idea, and I have to tell you, renunciation of citizenship, because it is such a big step, doesn't happen that often. So it's not like people are it's not like applying for a visa or renewing a passport. It's pretty rare.
Okay.
And quite significant. But I'll tell you something. 30 years ago, when I was working here, I was in the visa section, but I also worked in American Citizen Services. Okay. And we had politicians renounce citizenship then as well in order to sit in the legislative yuan. So this is something that we have been doing for a long time. There is a process. It's clear. It's pretty easy to understand. Anyone who wants to do it, it's a serious step, but they just need to work through the bureaucracy.
好，处长讲得非常清楚了，所以最后不管结果怎么样，不能怪 AIT， 要看每一个人的状况不一样，可能他的财产啊，他的过程啊，他那个时间怎么样，不能够就是讲 AIT。但AIT 的立场应该就是没有把它当成是一个特案，对不对？就是反正你来申请，我们就处理。但因为他已经被台湾媒体报道了，每天报纸都在写，最后过与不过哈。大家可能要回头问 AIT 啦，好，来我就问这一题的最后一句了，就是处长会因为这个 case 感到很困扰吗？
So you remember that first business card where I didn't have my occupation on my card? So the consular section is forever creating controversy. If we get to the point where people have to look at what the consular section has done in any specific case, whether it's American citizen services or visas, what we are aiming for is polite, professional, timely execution of our obligations and our duties. That's what we do. It's our job, and it's our responsibility.
好，处长讲得非常清楚了，因为我觉得今天也很有这个荣幸能够问到处长这些问题哈，就是因为台湾民众都很想知道。那台湾民众也常在问的一个问题就是说哈 ，AIT 真的是中立的吗？好，大家讲说没有 ，AIT 好像跟哪一个党比较好哈。那我这边同时秀出3张。好，就是处长跟赖清德副总统、柯文哲主席跟侯友宜市长，或者你可以说赖清德总统参选人、柯文哲总统参选人跟这个侯友宜总统参选人，都有照相了哈。那当然还有一个可能，如果有过关的话，或许多一个郭台铭。那遇到郭台铭，我想处长也不会说不跟他照相了，只是现在还没有。请问处长 ，AIT 跟您对于台湾的选举，美国对于台湾的下一个总统参选人？谁会产生总统，谁会当选总统这件事情，真的是完全中立，不会去介入吗？
It is absolutely true. We are entirely neutral. These 3 photos, 2 of them are taken at our 4th of July event this year, and the one with Lai Ching-te was taken at the 4th of July event last year. That's why my outfit is different. They were all 3 at 4th of July this year. We were super honored that all 3 of the candidates were there. I have worked with all of them. AIT has worked with all of them in their non-candidate capacities, vice president, mayor.
Yeah.
I have seen them all as candidates in informal settings and in more formal settings like July 4th. I am confident we could work with any of them.
那如果我想要问处长对这3个人、对这3位的印象是什么？处长有办法讲吗？你对他们3个人的印象
They're all skilled politicians, competent at what we would call governance. They have all handled big city mayoral questions and issues. They're very different people, right? But in terms of the ability to do the job of being an elected official, they have all clearly demonstrated that, which is why I think the United States could work with any one of them.
好，今天你看处长来跟大家谈哈，每一题都是有答案的。你看先前侯友宜去美国，柯文哲跟赖清德不止在台湾 AIT 啦，到美国去，其实美国的外交官就是都一样保持等距的。台湾民众不要怀疑，美国是个大国，他对于这些事情的话一定会掌握的尺度非常精确的。他尊重，因为民主国家的精神就是民主，所以怎么可能会去干涉台湾的民主过程呢？哈，这一点我相信这个大家不用太怀疑。那最后我想要请处长哦，因为你30年前来台湾，现在再次回来哈，也是一个非常这个特别的一个怎么讲，就是说一个境遇，可以在那么时候年轻的时候来给大家看一下哈，年轻的时候来台湾，那现在呢你又是处长，就带领着整个 AIT 在台湾这边跟台湾的那么多的民众，你也到处去，跟台湾应该有一些感情。那有没有什么话要跟看我们节目的台湾这个观众说？台湾的民众，好，就你有什么话要跟他们讲
？So absolutely. Being here is a professional dream come true. It was a dream I didn't even dream when I was a first tour officer here. When I came to Taiwan, I didn't even know what the director's first name was. He was just the director. And so being able to come back in that role, it's an awesome responsibility. Being able to do it not just in a place where I was very junior, but in a place where I was welcomed the first time I had lived outside my own country, the first time I had lived really away from family, to be able to come back and to be welcomed and to have perfect strangers walk up to me in the grocery store or in parking lots of national parks and talk to me. It's a wonderful thing. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to engage. If there are things your viewers think I should do or should stop doing, they should figure out a way to tell us, because within reason, I'll try. And I don't want people to be skeptical of America, but I do want people to ask us questions if they don't understand what we're doing.
好，今天非常谢谢孙晓雅处长来到我们的节目。其实我想台湾很多人也都很谢谢你到台湾来，当 AIT 的处长。那下次如果有机会，我们再聊咯。好 ，OK， 下班聊一聊，下班和你聊，我们下次再聊，拜拜。
拜拜。Thank you for watching today.
也请大家加入下班和你聊的频道会员。